Welcome back! This is CerealSnax, and today I'm looking at a game called Raiderz, or Raiderz as some people call it. And it's an MMO game basically centered around this combat that you do that is real-time combat, much like Terra. If you've ever played Terra, I've heard of Terra. It's not like a World of Warcraft or even a Guild Wars 2 type combat where you click your buttons and attack. It's more of a wide-ranging action kind of RPG. It's almost like you're playing like a Skyrim type game or Kingdoms of Amalur is what it reminds me a lot of, where you hit the enemies without really targeting them and you just are doing action type stuff. So it's not as, you know, kind of click and spam your buttons and spam your fireball over and over and over again. It's more of a strategy based dodging type combat style. And it's very reminiscent of Monster Hunter, which was on the PlayStation 3. Was it the 3 or the 2? Well, regardless, it was on the PlayStation console. And Monster Hunter was a game where you fought all these monsters. That was like the main thing. You could even play online. In fact, the meat of the game was online. And you collected monster parts, which you then combined into weapons. This game has that as well. I'm kind of just going through the character creation here. There's not a whole lot to see in the character creation. It's just the customization isn't too great at this point in time. This is the alpha version of Raiderz, and there's no release date currently for this game, although it is a game that's already out in Korea and the other Asian countries. So it's still undergoing localization to come into our country. As you can see, I'm just testing out the voices and stuff on this character, but the point I'm making is the game is more or less complete, I think, although it is in an alpha stage, so there's still a lot of things I think they're working on and kind of trimming up. I don't know if the character creation will ever be that detailed, simply because the game really isn't meant to be that. You do your character customization as you play the game in many ways. And by that, if you played Monster Hunter, when you collect a lot of your items from monsters, you actually can make your character look very unique based on the combinations that you combine all the items that you loot from. So you can see on my current session activity, it says recipes acquired, recipes used, monsters defeated, epic monsters defeated. So it's an MMO based on that kind of concept where you're all grouping up. It's almost the way they've advertised it as a kind of a group MMO where you fail alone, succeed together. And that's not entirely true, but I did find it some parts to be relatively difficult. So you'll see it's actually quite a beautiful game. You can see the graphics are pretty stunning. They're pretty crisp and clean, very reminiscent of Guild Wars 2 type graphics, but also it's different. I mean, it's got that kind of Asian aesthetic to it, kind of the anime. There's a little hint of anime in it, and that may not be for everybody, so just be forewarned. Terra was the same way. Now the big difference between Terra and this game, besides the fact that that Terra is more of even less so in combat than this, is that this game is free to play, completely free to play. You don't have to buy it, you don't have to pay a subscription, whereas Terra you had to buy it and pay a subscription, which I think turned a lot of people off in today's day and age because, you know, subscription-based MMOs have become few and far between. That said, free-to-play games people tend to shy away from because they're scared of the quality. So I think this game is really well positioned to become very popular simply because of the fact that it has a fairly high quality, even though it is free to play. And you can see I'm looting random bits of stuff, and that is really what I was talking about with the recipes that you can put together in this particular game. And as you can see with the combat, I'm not really targeting anything. I'm just kind of swinging this massive sword, and as long as you are swinging it in the general area of the monsters, I'm not doing too well. Here's the first time I was playing, and I'm kind of showing this off, but you actually can hit multiple creatures if they're within that radius of your swing. So kind of depends on how that goes. You can see I'm just doing a quest now. The quests are very similar. If you've played World of Warcraft and other MMOs, the quests are not much different. They're the same kind of thing. You get money and experience and all that for completing a quest. Now, one thing that you're not seeing me do, I'm trying to block here, but there's also a dodge, and I haven't done any of the dodging yet. But dodging is very important in this game. In fact, I think it's more important in some ways than it was in Terra. And it's, of course, way more important than Guild Wars 2. Now, Guild Wars 2, dodging is kind of a situational thing, and it's not something that you really do all the time. Now, you do dodge, but in this game, it's much more fluid. The weapons feel much more weighty. It almost feels like you're actually there hitting the creatures. The whole kind of screen shakes when you hit stuff. You can see that there. And the sounds are very crisp in terms of that. So in many ways you do feel very connected to the combat. I think that's the biggest selling point of this game. Plus the enemies that you fight, you see, like I'm not doing very good, but if you can anticipate when they're going to hit you and dodge away from them. So you just really feel connected to the combat. And that's one thing I know Terra, a lot of people said, oh, you know, Terra, the quests and the story are terrible, but the combat is amazing. So in this game, I actually think that in many ways the story and the lore behind it is actually better than Terra. And you'll see what I mean here. I'm not going to go through all the quest text and all that, but when I get to a quest I'll show you. It is very detailed. And of course the environments are very detailed. You can see this ship here. And there's just a lot of lore behind what you're doing. So, you know, which to me makes it a better game. Of course you add that to the fact that it's free to play and you're not paying a subscription, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're just going to have a vastly larger number of people potentially playing this game long term. So I'm just running into the town here, and you can see there's a ship at port here, and I really want to show you there's another aspect of this game that is pretty interesting, and that is the fact that you can actually attack enemies and take their stuff, and then use that stuff against them in the middle of the combat. So let me show that to you real quick. Okay, so I'm running up on this guy, this sea ubos, or whatever they call him. My hope is that I can actually get one of the items that he's carrying and use it against him in combat, because sometimes that happens depending on how you attack, and if you get lucky when they die. So let's see. Okay, yeah, so he dropped this mace, which you can use temporarily, and when you have the mace that he dropped, and a lot of these creatures drop similar items, but this particular guy drops a mace, you actually get, if you see down in my hotbar, I'm actually have the attack commands that they have, and you actually do a fair amount more damage than you normally would. Now it only lasts for a few attacks. See, I'm back to using my sword. These shield crabs are the same way. If you can hit them the right way and get their loot, you can actually get a piece of the crab to then use as a weapon against them. I didn't get one that time. You get a lot of crab meat, which you can use for recipes and that sort of thing. So you can see these creatures' maces lying all over the ground. So I'd like to show you kind of in practice how this whole game works in terms of like the epic bosses, and maybe this guy will drop something too. Somebody else named Chuck over here fighting this guy, Chuck No Axe. But these huge creatures, and I'll try to dodge him to show you what's. Oh, there we go. I kind of moved out of the way. You can kind of anticipate when they're going to hit you. This is an epic boss, and these world bosses kind of just wander around. The way the game is advertised is that these bosses really can't be taken down unless you're in a group. I found that to be not always the case. This particular one, of course he's not really paying attention to me, is relatively easy. Of course he's the first one I encountered, so I'm sure it gets more complicated after this. In fact, I'll show you another boss fight that I'm going to do that was considerably more difficult than this one. This guy, he's very obvious when he's going to hit you, so I can just move right out of the way and take him down. And these guys, they drop special loot, which you can then use to create items that are just amazing. He dropped a rock there that I could pick up, but of course I'm in the middle of dodging. And there we go, I got a stone fragment. So hopefully we can take it. He's already half health. But you can see how epic these battles could really get. And I believe that this particular boss is really just put here to give you an idea of what it's going to be like as you get higher in level. So this game is good in that respect, in that if you really are interested in doing huge boss fights where there's a lot of strategy involved, a lot of dodging involved, a lot of using your skills, then this is a great game for that. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do, how this alpha pans out, and when they release it, how much of this will be here, and how difficult they really make it. I think that the difficulty of these monsters is going to be critical to the success of the game, simply because if it's not difficult, people will get bored really easily, and they won't feel like what they've done was really worthwhile, that it really had a reward that was worth getting. So I'm going to run over here and turn in this quest. The quest was to kill this guy, so overwhelming power. Okay, and of course you get your experience and your money and all that good stuff. So let's just run back here. Maybe I can, here's the map, just show you the map. You know, right now this area is relatively complete from what I can tell, even though it's an alpha, just because, probably because, you know, this game was in Korea, so a lot of it is done. There are some incomplete stuff that I've seen. There's a few places where the text was still in Korean, and there's a few places where the map didn't seem entirely complete. But overall, I'm pretty impressed. I believe you can even still sign up for alpha testing, although I know it was coming to a close, but they may, you know, be opening up a beta test. So check out the website. I put it in the description, and you can sign up and try this game out for yourself. I'm going to show you a few more things here. So let's see. I had a quest to turn in here. Turn that in. Yeah, so I got some more recipes, and I haven't shown a lot of the crafting yet. But there's a blacksmith over here. You can see him beating on his anvil. That's where you go to create items. So when you get different things, you can actually build weapons that are pretty cool. Pirate greatsword. We'll make the pirate greatsword. There's crafting. So this is what I was talking about with customizing yourself. Now I was just looking at weapons for right now. But if I equip this pirate greatsword, you can see it's even bigger than it was before. It actually looks a lot like Cloud Sword from Final Fantasy VII. So now I didn't really talk about classes in the beginning, and I'm about to fight this elite boss. But while I'm doing that, I would talk about classes. There really are no classes in this game. You pick builds basically, which I guess more or less are classes. But oof, and I just got slammed by that guy. But really, it just allows you to start your customization, and the customization of each build is pretty incredible. You can really go down a lot of different routes and really have a lot of variety in what you end up doing as a skill. As you can see, I'm kind of just been focusing on this huge two-handed sword, but you can really do anything you want in this game, it seems like. So it is classless in that respect. It reminds me a lot of the Secret World, which I reviewed before, in that you have so many options down your talent trees that it's really hard to pinpoint anybody as a certain class. They really aren't. Your starting build does determine a few little things, but it doesn't really, dictate what you're going to be doing long term. So when I'm done this battle, I will show you the talents that you can pick from, kind of give you an idea of how complicated that whole thing is, how you can customize your character. So this guy, you can see he does these little call outs to know when you're going to attack. He does this jump up in the air, and you can actually see his shadow on the ground and try to get out of his way, because that attack will kill you in almost one hit. This is the boss. You can see when I came up on him, he only had a quarter of his health, but this is one of the bosses where I really struggled with, and I feel like either I was underleveled or this is what they intended, is to have a very difficult boss that requires that you have a group to defeat. So, or at least 2 or 3 other players. Even just one other player would have been a huge benefit to me. You can see how much I'm kind of struggling, even though I'm kind of whipping out all my dodges that I can do, all my kind of skills on my hotbar that I can use just to get out of his way. And he's almost dead here. The other neat thing about this boss, and I haven't been able to do it yet, but you can actually knock his horn off and then use it as a very powerful weapon against him. Now, I haven't been lucky enough to have that happen to me this time, but that would have been neat to show off, because that's a fun thing to do, is to knock off the parts of the enemies and use it against them. We'll check out, see what he dropped here really quick as well. Maybe he dropped some cool stuff. Like I said, these boss type enemies drop some interesting things. You can see I got a Crystal of Priest. Can be attached to armor or weapons to enhance their performance, and then there's some of the normal drops. So cool stuff that you can collect and just build and create and all that sort of stuff. Let me look at the talent points really quick. Okay, I know that's a little jarring because it's a different scene, but I recorded the talent point screen earlier. So if you look at this, you can see that you've got these mastery skills here on the right that you can eventually unlock depending on what kind of chains you pick through here. So at first you're only allowed to pick from this first row, and then you can do a mastery if you want in the right row. So you can see all the different skills that she's got. You can really customize down the row. I'm just going to pick this one because obviously it's my only choice, just because of my level. But that gives you a good idea of how complicated this game can really be in terms of customizing your character. And one thing I want to leave you guys here, but one thing I just want to say is I just think that the art direction that they did and the difference in the creatures that you're fighting is really interesting, and they've really done a good job. Like I said, it reminds me of Terra, just without the monthly fee and without this, without paying for the box to begin with. So I'm really looking forward to seeing kind of what they do with this in beta. I want to see what kind of changes are made. I still have a little bit of issue with the camera. It just seems kind of jerky, a little bit clunky. The graphics are great, but they seem a little bit jerky to me, almost like you're running. It's like not as smooth as it should be. And I don't think that's a function of my own kind of hardware. I think that's a function of just the game not being completely optimized yet. So we'll see how that turns out. I'm gonna continue to fight this frog thing again. Why not? And hope you enjoyed my quick first impressions of Raiderz, or Raiderz, however you want to call it, and I hope you enjoyed and got some information out of it. So I will talk to you soon.